Good day, my treasured friends. Here I am again. I want to start a series of information. I want to call it, Truth, Freedom Project. Well, I want to appeal to the hearts of those who would look into their consciences and judge, and support or not, you know, recognize as truth, right? First, I have to say Marioka. What is Marioka? This is my language, it's Warao language, Marioka. What does it mean? Well, it means that the Great Spirit who manifested as the Son, then as the Creator, and the Sustainer, and the Destroyer, is within all of us as that Great Spirit, as that life energy, you see. So, that energy makes us one, it's in every living thing. So that now that we know who we are and that we are one, let's ask ourselves a little question. If one is not truthful to himself, can he be truthful to someone else? Okay. Pardon me. The history of indigenous people of the Americas started with the voyages of Columbus. It's a history of plunder, rape, murder, genocide, unlawful wars, defined as discovery. The end result of it all is that is an almost complete decimation of indigenous and aboriginal peoples or sovereign nations. It wound up with colonial occupants of our aboriginal lands, creation of colonial empires who replaced the aboriginal owners by decolonization, which established colonially new states as new sovereign, replacing us. Under the doctrines of European and the United Kingdom, they became independent states who replace Aboriginal traditions with democracy, constitutional rule of states dependent upon the colonial masters' military protection. Trade conventions, labor conventions, international laws, and Congress and parliamentary governance structures, indoctrination of European cultures and traditions, laws, and so on. And the concept of human rights of individuals, you see. Indigenous peoples' traditions have been outlawed, because in Aboriginal concepts of rights belong to rights of nations. It's like a collective, it's everybody. It's not an individual. We are a society. We are a family. We are one. And our concepts have been destroyed and replaced by these individual concepts of human rights and so on. So that these new states like Canada and America, United States of America, Australia, Venezuela, and others throughout the entire world circumference now serve as allied dependencies of European countries. So it started in 1492 and it's still going on to the present day. Let us look at the laws of Europe implemented to rule and dominate the world, backed by armies and weapons of mass destruction, which they do not want other countries to have or possess, perhaps due to fear. So the bully could have fear, of revolution against their system. So I wish to read to you since 1538, where Spain, the Emperor of Spain, was advised by Franciscus de Vitoria in 1883, a ruling by the United States of America's Supreme Court, 1976, a ruling by the American United States Court, and in 1982, a ruling by Lord Denning with respect to Canada. You see, the intent here is to show how the white man or the European has used laws to govern us and to keep us in subjection under his will and domination. And as you will see in the course of the judge's opinion and so on. So, I'm reading here an excerpt from the book The Great Sioux Nation, written by Roxanne Dunbar Otis. And she writes, the first known legal document relating to the Americas was written by Franciscus de Vitoria on the behest of the Emperor of Spain. Influential in Europe throughout, generally incorporated into the then developing international law. So, Father Vitoria stated, quote, that the Aborigines in question were the true owners of lands in the New World. Thus he found, quote again, discovery could convey no title upon Europeans. Discovery could convey no title upon Europeans. And even the Pope had no right to partition the property of the Indians. So the Pope had no right to partition our property. Rather, a treaty conveying such rights, to which the Indian sovereign was agreeable, which is the most important thing here, to which the Indian sovereign was agreeable, so they got to have our consent, was seen as the prerequisite to land acquisition. Now this was since 1538, right? But Europe has turned their back on this great pronouncement, you know, all in the name of greed. So we find that, let's look at their laws again. I'm referring to the U.S. Supreme Court summary in Case Law 2, Ex parte Crow Dog. Here is where a judge made a pronouncement, and he says, it cannot be denied that official policy of the United States, until at least the 19th century, was impelled by a resolute will to control substantial territory for its westward moving people. Whatever obstructed the movement, including the Indians, was to be shoved aside, dominated, or destroyed. Wars, diseases, treaties, pocked by duplicity and decimation of the buffalo or the food supply by whites, drove the Sioux Nation to reservations, shriveled their population, and disemboweled the corporate body. They were left a people unwillingly dependent, in fact, upon the United States. It is an ugly history. White Americans may retch at the recollection of it. Despite this acknowledgement, the court relied on the political question doctrine, I repeat, doctrine, which specified that relations with the Indians are given exclusively to the executive and legislative branches. So although we signed treaties in the Americas, they actually made these treaties look like, you know, what they wanted it to look like. Duplicity, duplicating, double stand, double interpretation, more to suit themselves. And use them against our people to take away our lives. This continues today. Just some years ago, Trump came into power and he wanted to run a pipeline through the Indian reservation, through Indian lands. But these people have no respect for us. They treat us, you know, with impunity. And they want us to come to their laws or their courts in order to be, to their jurisdiction, you know, in order for them to judge us as if they are gods or something, you know. So I'm examining their laws, you know. In some instances they were fair, and I refer to this one here. Oliphant versus Shihile, number 74 215, August 1976. Pardon me. When the Supreme Court speaks clearly, the judge states, I must honor the statement or be unfaithful to my duty to the law as the United States has been to the promises they made to the Indians in America. The proper approach to the question of tribal criminal jurisdiction is to ask first what the original sovereign powers of nations, tribes, were, and then how far and in what respects these powers have been limited. The court declared the tribes retain these powers of autonomous states that are neither inconsistent with their status, nor expressly terminated by Congress or by Parliament in our case, some cases then. These are the three cases that I have read here. I wish now to go to a case in Canada, Lord Denning. And it reads here on page 22 from the book Drumbeat. Yeah. In this judgment, the distinguished jurist Lord Denning described the Royal Proclamation of 1763 as equivalent to an entrenched provision in the Constitution of the colonies of North America. You know England were the colonial master of North America, period. And held that it is binding on the crown so long as the sun shines and the river flows, speaking in our language here. Its force as a statute, said Lord Denning, is analogous to the status of Magna Carta, which has always been considered to be the law throughout the empire. There is a remarkable confirmation of the views our people have never ceased to espouse since Canada was colonized, or since our nations were colonized. Lord Denning said, the obligations of the British Crown under the Royal Proclamation and under the pre-Confederation treaties signed with native peoples were undertaken by Canada with the passing of the British North American Act of 1867. He went out of his way to reaffirm their continuing meaning. He said the proposed Canadian Constitution does all that can be done to protect the rights and freedoms of the Aboriginal peoples of Canada. I beg to differ. The discussion in this case will strengthen their hand so as to enable them to withstand any onslaught. So we expect that we would have onslaught. They will be able to say that their rights and freedoms have been guaranteed to them by the Crown, originally by the Crown in respect of the United Kingdom, and now by the Crown in respect of Canada. But in any case, by the Crown. No Parliament should do anything to lessen the worth of these guarantees. They should be honored by the Crown in respect of Canada, so long as the sun shines and the river flows. That promise must never be broken. Well, this goes for all British colonies, you see. And I'm from Trinidad and Tobago, 2 islands northeast of South America. We are the Warao Nation. And we've been living in these territories based on our oral history for over 18,000 years now. I say 18,000 years, you know, because it speaks to the figure 9. And Irving Rouse, Professor Irving Rouse, discovered our stone spears, head, in the bones of, Glyptons and Magnons, you know, which are these extinct animals nowadays. and carbon dated it, the stone axe and so on, to be 18,000 years ago. So to my mind, this is evidence that we existed then, because we are the Stone Age people. See? However, our creator, Lord Mawari, based on our oral traditions, created us perfectly, created a temple of tobacco smoke, and trained insects, to learn to live in harmony with each other. Those that were apparently predators of one another. And so this was the university, and these insect spirits actually were the spirits of shamanism that entered the body of a shaman, in a human form, that is, as he studied firstly Bahana, the shamanism of light, pardon me, secondly Hoa, the shamanism of ancestral worship. For our ancestors are spirits manifested into human forms, and they continue to manifest in incarnations, so to speak. I'm an incarnation of one of my ancestors. So happens that I'm not well versed in shamanism or anything like that, But I picked up the mantle to stand in defense of my people's sovereignty and the right to our territory, and the right to give our consent to share our territory if we so choose, you see. Given that we never had a treaty with Spain or with England, United Kingdom, or with the people of Trinidad and Tobago, who through the Independence Act, the United Kingdom Independence Act of Trinidad and Tobago 1962, which gave them the right to create a constitution. And according to this constitution, and the lawyers and judges and so on, they're telling us that within this constitution, there's no protection for the rights of indigenous people in Trinidad and Tobago. I mean, imagine at this age. Since 2007, the government signed the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. And up to today, what's that, 7 from 19? 12 years? Well, not quite 12 years, let's say 11 years and 6 months. They have been treating us, well, firstly, there was a mission in Trinidad, what we call a slave camp, a reservation then. But they were our people were the true revolutionaries, that never accepted colonialism and died, rather than go to prison, you see. Well, of course, there could have been some that went to prison. But the fact is that we lived in the forest, and we went back to the mainland of Venezuela, you see. Our territory northeast of South America includes Venezuela, Suriname, Guyana, Trinidad and Tobago, and parts of Colombia. Well, Simon Bolivar, European brother, led our people to believe that he was our liberator. And in truth and in fact, yes, he was liberating our people, but for the purposes of his people, immigrants from Europe, to eventually take over our lands and name it the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. He borrowed money to fight this war and continued to fight in our name for the liberation of South America. Another brother that did this in contemporary times is Brother Chavez, And now we have Brother Maduro, you see. So the same thing is happening again where America wants to storm Venezuela because they still believe that these colonies belong to them. And they have this nuclear power and weapons of mass destruction. And they need to put, not so much indigenous people because they don't believe that we exist anymore. We don't have the power. We're not in the majority according to their democratic system, which is majority rule, you see. So these brothers feel that they own the world, Africa, Australia, fought wars in China, India, all over the place, the entire world circumference. They want to rule. And at present they're ruling. But we have other countries like Russia, China, we have North Korea now, Iran, lately Syria, that are standing up to them. And Russia has the military hardware and the weapons of mass destruction to destroy them. We don't know what's going to happen with them because, these guys in my mind, they're all Europeans, and they're not going to fight against each other once they could oppress us and exploit our resources and remain the rich nations while we nenen, so to speak. In Trinidad, you say that, So, they're not going to fight anything here. And there's only a lot of talk, The very United Nations, who actually, what should I say, who legitimized these new states, of Europe, these colonies, and made them into independent states, They have created what we have there, the Inter-American Court, And if you look at the Inter-American Court, we would see where, and I'm quoting here from a professor, a Seattle professor, in the matter of Saravacu versus Ecuador, Article 21 of the American Convention on Human Rights, so that now America becomes so powerful that they have their own American Convention on Human Rights, you see? Show you well, what shall I say? The bold-facedness of these guys, Reading. When traditional lands are involved, well, this is the Inter-American Court that promises to give rights onto indigenous people we're talking about here, right? The American Court. When traditional lands are involved, the right to property has become the court's structural basis for indigenous people's rights. So they're bold-faced enough to tell you that. Firstly, the court's approach limits the autonomy of indigenous people and their capacity for change. So we have to have a capacity to change to suit their system. And if we don't do that, then they limit that capacity because it's not in their law, you see? We have to change to suit them because they run things. Secondly, the right to property inherently has difficulty providing basic protection for ancestral lands because domestic and international laws grant states wide latitude to interfere with property. So, all over the world, the lands belong to Canada, no longer